Hello, everybody. It's nice to see you. Feel free to type your name into the chat box, and I'll keep announcing that as people arrive in the next few minutes. Valerie Green, love coach, and for the past 13 years, I've been helping women attract and sustain lasting love. And in this webinar, I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 pitfalls that I've noticed that women fall into that prevent them from getting the love that they want. So over the next hour, I'll be delighted to share detailed solutions to these 3 pitfalls so that you can become magnetic to the love that you deserve. And if you stay until the very end of this webinar, then I'm going to be sharing a little known connection tool that'll help you create a magnetic connection on a date that'll nearly guarantee that he'll be mesmerized by you. And you can even use this technique with friends or family or at work anytime that you want to persuade people to align with you. So that's, if you stay until the end, that's what I'll be sharing at the end. And also at the end, I'll be answering everyone's questions. So feel free to type your message into the chat box, and I can answer your questions throughout if we have time. But I'm going to get to everyone's questions at the end. So this is a really great time to get your questions answered. Anything about relationships, whether he didn't call back or whether you keep attracting unavailable men. It's a really great way to get all your questions answered. So that's also at the end. And I'm really excited to share this slide presentation with you. Before I do, I would love to share a little bit more about me and my journey. You might be curious, who is Valerie Green and why is she so excited about helping me attract, sustain, lasting love? So, like most of us in the post-feminist age, I grew up in the early 80s. I was taught that men and women are the same. And so I pretty much treated men like I treated my girlfriends, and I would wonder why they'd eventually lose interest. So as a kid, I'd felt controlled, and I was afraid of being controlled by a man. So I tended to pick men who were easygoing, and they generally didn't mind me making the plans and making the rules and generally managing the household. And eventually I would feel overburdened and start telling him what to do, how to do the chores or how to manage his time. And that would just push him away more. And then we wound up getting into arguments or growing distant. And then I would just wonder why my relationships would start out great, but then something would always pull us apart. You know what I mean? So that started me on a transformational journey. How to have a truly connected and fulfilling relationship, which took years of trial and error in my own relationships. I studied many different healing, emotional healing, and communication tools, and I really used them into the trenches with my coaching clients for the past 13 years, as well as in my own relationships. And the biggest shift happened for me several years ago, where my partner and I were caught in a painful cycle of push-pull again. And he told me that he wasn't sure that I was the one. So I knew I had to really walk my talk. And I really learned how to listen to my heart instead of just my mind, how to really hear the voice of my higher self and be able to speak from my heart, and to stop telling him what to do, but instead turn my attention towards what made me feel good, to unconditionally love and take care of myself. And then how to share my feelings in a way that inspired him to step up and want to meet my needs. And it really seemed like magic. He all of a sudden wanted to spend more time with me and was interested in what made me feel good. And he said that he wanted me as his life partner. And he said at that point, and I'm quoting him, and he told me that I could, that you was so beyond blown away my doubts that I had in the beginning about committing to you, like a bulldozer over matchsticks, just by being who you are. It feels so good to be with you in every way imaginable. And so I continued to train with the top relationship experts like Sue Johnson and John Gottman. And I went to the Relationship Coaching Institute, which is the largest relationship coaching training program in the world. And when I share these techniques with my clients over the years, they had breakthroughs in their intimacy. And my single clients would break through old patterns and attract available men. So I kept getting the same results and teaching the same thing over and over again. So I created a step-by-step program for women to attract and sustain lasting love. And so it's not just you or not just my clients who are struggling and can get these results. I've shared this program with hundreds of people and they've got amazing results. And this webinar really can be the solution that you're looking for, because if it can happen for them, then it can happen for you too. So I'm excited to share the slide presentation with you, and feel free to type your questions into the chat box. So I'm going to share the slides now. And here we go. So here's what you'll discover in this webinar. How to avoid the 3 pitfalls to attracting love so that you can be magnetic to your Mr. Right. And then also how to reprogram the limiting beliefs that are sabotaging you. Why you keep attracting the same negative pattern again and again, and how to finally break out of it. How to use the law of polarity to attract your ideal match, because the law of attraction says like attracts like, and the law of polarity says opposites attract, and you actually need both in order to create romance and passion. And the 10 key skills that you need to know to attract a high quality man, inspire him to commit, and maintain love, intimacy, and passion in the long term. So it would be worth staying just for that, am I right? So here are some of the places that the women I coach are coming from, and I'd like you to notice if you can identify with any of these. So maybe you've been on too many dates to mention and you're feeling resigned and hopeless that love will find you. Or maybe you're scared or confused at why there don't seem to be high quality or conscious men out there, or all the good ones are taken and you're saying, maybe I'm just too picky, right? I mean, I've certainly felt that way in the past. Maybe you keep attracting the same kind of partner again and again, or you keep attracting unavailable men and you want to finally break out of that pattern and find lasting love. Or maybe you've suffered from feeling disappointed or heartbroken or rejected and you're ready to throw in the towel, but you're here to get guidance on what to do differently and you need a plan. So that's what I'm going to be providing for you. Or you might have stories that you're too old or you're not attractive enough. So I just want to let you know that these struggles are not your fault. That so many brilliant, beautiful, successful women are struggling right now. It's really part of a bigger story. We're becoming more successful and conscious, but there's been practically no modeling from our parents or history about how to have a truly healthy, passionate partnership, because dynamics between men and women have shifted tremendously since our parents' generation. And things have changed more in the past 50 years than the past 5,000 years before that. I mean, think about it. Women have stepped into power and success in every area of the Western world, but at the same time, we're more lonely and isolated. We're working hard and we're exhausted, right? I mean, so many of my friends are telling me that. And if this is you, then you're not alone. A recent New York Times article said that 50% of women are living alone without a partner. So even though we're more successful, we're also more isolated than ever. And this is actually an opportunity for us because, 50 years ago, women just started to be liberated of the role of wife and mother as the only role that we're supposed to want. And since then, men have also been freed up from the provider protector role as the only role that they can have. So we can actually self-actualize. And it requires something greater than our ancestors had. We literally need new models to follow. So now that we can actually desire flourishing and thriving and reaching our higher potential together, we can birth a new possibility, which is extraordinary love. So you desire to be loved and cherished and adored and have someone be a safe haven for you to support each other and who you're both becoming. I know that these are all the things that I have, and I'm sure that these are things that you want. So I'm just going to list some of what extraordinary love, some of the qualities of what extraordinary love is. You long for a man who will be a real partner to you, and whom you respect. And we want mutual security and passion, right? A man who will collaborate to plan romantic dates, bring you flowers, and whisk you away on romantic getaways. And for those of you who are on a personal growth or spiritual path, you long to be spiritually met and joined together as one, to heal your wounds and grow together to your highest potential. And that's certainly what me and my partner have. So it's definitely possible. And you know deep down that a secure relationship is a strong foundation for thriving and achieving, and you deserve that. You yearn to be met on all levels, to be seen and known and loved for who you are. And even if that's scary, we all need that. And what I'm saying is that this wasn't possible for our ancestors within those old roles. But now that we're in the 21st century, we're both freed up to want this. And I'm here to tell you that if you have the desire for extraordinary love, it's more than possible with the right tools and a proven system. So I see that more people are arriving now, and I'm excited to see people here. Feel free to type your name and where you're from in the chat box to introduce yourself, and I'll say hi. So I will dive in to the 3 pitfalls now that women get caught in that prevent us from finding and keeping lasting love. And these 3 pitfalls are things that I see again and again. And I used to experience these in my life. And that was why I could keep love alive long term. So this is not just pitfalls that single women have. But if you find a man and you have these 3 pitfalls, then the relationship doesn't have a chance to get off the ground, really, and turn into lifelong love. All right, so you ready? So the first pitfall, which I'm sure that many of you are aware of, is our limiting beliefs. But I want to go deeper here than a lot of people go with beliefs. Because when you have a limiting belief, a lot of times they're unconscious. It's not like we necessarily know these things on the surface. So take a moment and notice what happens when I say to you, your Mr. Right will walk into your life very soon. What happens inside your body when I say that? Are you 100% in alignment and it feels good and you're excited? Or is there a voice in your head that says something like, oh, no, you won't because you're to this, or you never did that, or men are all this? But that's okay because that's what needs to be reprogrammed and you can do it. So I'd like you to pay attention to what happened because we're going to go deeper with it. And I'll lead you through a short practice in this webinar to identify and reprogram your limiting beliefs so that you feel it in your bones, that you deserve love and that you're going to get it. Oh, and so Suzanji, is that how you pronounce your name? Says, aloha, everyone. This is great. I'm all ears. Oh, wonderful. Are you from Hawaii? I love aloha. I've been playing the ukulele lately, so I've heard that a lot. So, hello, welcome. So I'd like to explain how life is happening through us, not to us, through the filter of our beliefs. So in New Age and spiritual circles, we hear a lot that we're the creators of our experience, right? And somehow we create our experience through our beliefs. And I'm sure that you've heard that before, and maybe you even said affirmations or done some work on your beliefs. So I'd like to explain first how this actually occurs, because to a lot of us, it kind of occurs like magic. This idea occurs like magic, like as if there's a big computer in the sky that somehow sends us experiences that match our beliefs, like as if by magic. And so I'd like us to take a look at how this actually happens, how we generate our experience so that we can have the tools to generate the experience that we want. So one of the main purposes of our childhood and early adulthood is survival, right? So we create our beliefs to avoid painful feelings, because as a kid, we have 2 choices. We can either believe that there's something wrong with our parents, in which case we might die. So that's too unsafe. Or we can believe that there's something wrong with us so that one day we have a chance of fixing it, because as a kid, that occurs to us as safe. But what happens is then we actually have a belief, like if our father was narcissistic, for example, and he couldn't really see me or mirror or reflect my feelings, then I'm likely to make false meaning out of that. I'm likely to decide that, for example, I'm not wanted, or that my feelings don't matter, or that I can't have what I need. So take a moment to notice if that might be similar to your story, or if you had another version of not getting your needs met as a child. I know that was similar to my story, and I created a belief like my needs don't matter or my feelings don't matter. And so then I would suppress my feelings, and that's why I would just wind up being in my head and getting into arguments with men instead of sharing my feelings. So the thing is that this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because when we relate to men from that belief that I'm not wanted, for example, we take actions based on this belief that generate evidence that these beliefs are true. So that's how it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want to give you an example of how this happens. And Liat from New York City is here. Hello. Thank you for joining us. So here's an example of how this actually occurs. So for example, let's say I have that belief that I'm not wanted. So because I'm coming from that belief, I take actions based on that belief that generate evidence that that belief is true. So maybe if I believe that I'm not wanted, then maybe I'll try to figure out who I need to be to get love from men, who they want me to be. So I might do things for him to try to earn love, but I'm feeling anxious underneath, right? So of course I'm not being my authentic self for him to want. That's not attractive to a quality man who wants to love a woman who's present and in touch with her inner joy. So he'll just smell my inauthenticity and then lose interest. And then I get more evidence of not being wanted. But I want to highlight here that it's how I showed up, not showing him my true pleasure, my true feelings, that caused him to lose interest, not me authentically that I'm not wanted. It's how I showed up inside this belief that generated evidence that this belief is true. So now that we know how all this works, I want to give you a short process on how to shift these beliefs. Sounds good, right? So the good news is that our beliefs dictate our experience until we become conscious of them. And that once we're aware of them, then we don't have to let them run our lives anymore. It's kind of like our brain is a computer running outdated programming, and it'll keep running until we update it. So here's a short process that you can do that involves shifting your thoughts to a new belief that updates the program and lets you let love in. But of course, it all comes from taking consistent action from this new belief. So the belief shifting process, I'll share you a couple of steps from my belief shifting process. The first step is to identify your limiting belief. So take a moment now to feel into what happened for you when I said, "Your Mr. Right will meet you very soon." So maybe you feel unworthy or undeserving, or maybe it comes from your past, like you have a belief that all men are afraid of commitment or just in it for sex, or whatever it is that your experience has been. So just feel into what the I am or men are statement that comes up for you. And I'll give you some examples of beliefs that many of my clients have had. So, of course, most of us have this belief that I'm not good enough. We all have that to some degree, right? But it's just about identifying how it lives for you. And I'll just read them in case people are listening to this. So as I do that, you can write down which one of these might resonate for you or which version of it might be there for you. Because we all have it. I mean, I'm not good enough sometimes when I get triggered with my partner, and we can hold space for each other and help each other heal those beliefs. But if we're not able to really identify what they are, then we can't do that. So maybe it's I don't belong, or I'm not safe, I'm a burden, or I'm not lovable deep down. A lot of us have that too. I'm not attractive or young or successful or thin enough. All the good ones are taken. All men are players, afraid to commit, pigs, etc. There's no such thing as true love. I've definitely heard that one before too. And I've doubted it at times too, trust me. I'll have to settle, or I'll be rejected or abandoned, or I'll lose myself if I love, right? That's all about boundaries. So just feel what might be true for you under the surface. And if you have a notebook, then write it down. And I encourage you to get a notebook because we'll be doing a journaling exercise at the end of this process. So I should have told you that in the beginning. Or you can just write a note on your computer. And step number 2 is to just acknowledge what are the consequences of believing this in your adult life. So to really take responsibility for how you show up inside of this belief. And this is where the power is, right? Because if we're always blaming men, and it might be true that you've really been hurt in the past. I'm not denying that men can do some really hurtful things. It's just that if we're blaming them, then we can't actually change this belief. So just like in this example of not being wanted, of course it was him who left, right? And him who didn't, create a safe environment for us to show up inside our authentic self. But at the same time, if I'm acting out of this false belief, I'm showing up in a way that's pushing him away. So how do you show up when you're believing this that generates evidence that this belief is true? So acknowledging the consequences allows us to get past the discomfort of changing our habits, right? Because beliefs are habits, and habits require energy to change and to try on a new belief. Acknowledging the consequences just gives us motivation to do something different. All right. So here's how I help people shift these beliefs. So I'll give you a short process that you can do right now. So basically, I'd like you to choose an empowering belief that you're going to take action from now on. So you don't have to believe it yet. You just have to take a small action from this new belief because the actions are what gives us different results. So let's say you believe that I'm not wanted. So I'd like you to actually come up with 3 reasons that this new belief is true. So for example, if I'm not wanted, if I believe that I'm not wanted, what are 3 reasons that the people in my life do want me, right? Or 3 examples that this new belief is true. Reasons or examples, right? So I can say, well, my best friend is really attracted to me. We've been best friends for 10 years and we can share everything together, right? So that's an example of how you are wanted. Or if you've been in a long-term relationship before and it doesn't matter if it ended after a long time, you were still wanted for all of that time. So there is evidence that this new belief is true. And that's what actually gives you the confidence to be able to move forward and take action from this new belief. Because the point is that we have to take action from the new belief in order for the new belief to actually, in order for our unconscious to receive the evidence that it's true. I mean, we can think of evidence from the past, but our unconscious mind believes that the old belief is true. So it's not until we take different actions that then generate new experiences that show us that this belief is true. So if you believe that you are wanted or whatever your new belief is, what different actions would you take? And just take a moment to think about if you took that action, sure, your unconscious mind is going to be scared and saying, but maybe it'll, that's a risk and you're going to receive confidence back that you're not wanted. But of course, that's why it helps to be able to have a supportive community that supports you in taking these new actions and interpreting the results, because that's how you can actually get the evidence that the new belief is true. And so there are actually 6 steps in my belief shifting process. And we don't have time for all of them in this webinar. Learning them is an interactive process, but I'm going to give you an example of how it works. And this is basically it, is that you take actions from this new belief, and then from the actions, you interpret that a new belief is actually true. You find evidence throughout your life, through a supportive community and through your friends and people who are really supportive of you, that this new belief is true. And what happens is that reprograms your unconscious mind so that you're more likely to believe the new belief and take actions from the new belief. So, for example, I worked with a client named Becky who would go on a lot of dates, but they never turned into a serious relationship. So she either liked them and they weren't into her, or they'd be really attracted to her and she wasn't turned on by them. I'm sure you've either heard of that or experienced that. So when we looked into her beliefs, she discovered that deep down, she believed that if a man really saw deep into her, her feelings and needs and wounds, that he wouldn't want her, that she wasn't lovable deep down. So that actually caused her to act closed off. And then men that she was attracted to experienced her as cold, so they'd lose interest. So that's how she was showing up inside of that belief. So in my group coaching program, I and the other women supported Becky in learning to open up about her feelings, her desires, and her interests, and receive back positive feedback from other women. So she got this experience of, if I did believe that I was lovable deep down, how would I act? She would share herself more. She would share her feelings more. She would share their desires and thoughts and interests more. So she found this supportive community in my group coaching program. Of course, you don't need me for that. You can also create that with your friends. You can create a little group. Let's challenge our limiting beliefs together and reflect back to each other that these new beliefs are true. So she also started journaling and meditating so she could give herself the love and acceptance that she wanted from a man. And that was really important because that actually gave her the self-confidence that even if she was rejected, that she'd still be able to receive love from both her friends and the supportive community and from herself. So then she was able to open up more with men on dates. And within a few months, she met Andrew, a wonderful gentleman who loved her for who she was on the inside. And they've been together for almost a year now and are talking about marriage. And also in my one-on-one and group coaching programs, I teach an embodied step-by-step process that helps my clients to develop a loving relationship between the different parts of them and reparent the wounded parts of them, the same way that we would lovingly nurture and empower a child. And this is because the wounded parts of us learn the limiting beliefs as children. And in this way, we learn to fall deeply in love with all of ourselves and really live from our deepest truth, from our empowered beliefs. And so we also take empowering actions in my group coaching programs to empower each other to take the daily actions from the place of our new belief so that we become magnetic to the things that we want, not just a relationship, but also everything that we desire in our health, our careers, and our relationship with money. And several of you have already expressed interest in the affordable group coaching program. So I'll be covering that at the end in a little bit. But like I said, you can create a supportive community with your friends too. It's just about surrounding yourself with people that love you and reflect back to you that these new beliefs are true, and really keeping you accountable to taking action from this new belief. That's really where the rubber hits the road, right? Is these new actions and being held accountable for new actions because they can feel scary. So now we'll identify the patterns that get you stuck. The purpose here is not to make you wrong, but to break the patterns, because patterns only have power over us when they're unconscious. So once we identify them, we can heal them. However, you have to be willing and open to the level of self-inquiry that's required, because this path is not usually comfortable at first, but the end is worth it. It's kind of like pulling off a Band-Aid. So, you have to just do it and do it quickly. So I'd like you to identify whether the following patterns were true for you, either for you or the men that you keep attracting. And I'll read it again in case people are listening. And I want to emphasize that this is coaching and not therapy. So we're not identifying these old patterns to analyze them or dwell in them. But what we're doing is we're identifying them because that's how you can identify the solution to these patterns. And we focus on the solution. We don't focus on analyzing the problem. So I'd like you to notice if any of these patterns feel true for you. So do you avoid becoming close to others, or do you keep attracting men who are unavailable, right? So it's either side of the coin. Or maybe you fear commitment, or the men that you attract fear commitment. Because a lot of women do too, deep down. Like, we fear that we'll lose ourselves, or we fear that we'll have to give up our careers or our interests, or sacrifice ourselves for men. So there's a lot of reasons that women fear commitment too, and we actually just have to look at that and reprogram that pattern. Has the fear of rejection become an issue repeatedly? Or do you attract men who are unfaithful or don't keep their promises? Or maybe they criticize you or your feelings. Or maybe they're jealous or controlling or have a temper or are moody. Or do you find it hard to end a relationship even when you realize that it's harmful for you? So this is slightly different than the limiting beliefs, because patterns are experiences that keep repeating, and it's for a similar reason, but it's really about meeting our emotional needs. So that's what we'll talk about. So first, I want to ask you another question, and it is kind of like, pulling off a Band-Aid, but it's worth it. So the question is, how much do these patterns remind you of your relationship with your parents or caretakers or siblings or even friends or significant mentors growing up? Because patterns like limiting beliefs were put in place at one point to keep us from feeling painful feelings. And unfortunately, we tend to attract partners who are like our parents or caretakers because our unconscious mind wants us to repeat the past in an attempt to achieve a happy ending this time around. So I also want to ask a question, because this has how it was for me, is that because I felt controlled growing up, I fell into the opposite of the pattern. I wanted to be the one in control. And that's why I attracted men that were easygoing and let me be in control. But that's not actually what I wanted deep down. So I'd eventually get upset and start demanding things and then push him away. So that was the pattern that I got caught in. But it was still ruled by, well, I wanted him to be the opposite of how my parents were. So I'm still caught within this pattern, either that my partner is similar to how my parents were, or that he's the opposite, because I'm kind of rebelling against it. So yes, I'm hearing fear of commitment and fear of intimacy. I keep men at a distance, guarding my heart. Thank you for sharing that. And that happens with a lot of women. It's a cliche that women are the ones who are emotionally open. A lot of women fear that too. And then when we're coming from that place, then we can't actually inspire a man, because he wants to feel our heart, right? And he wants to be able to feel our love for ourselves first and then for him. So it's not about just loving him. It's about loving ourselves first. So that's actually what I'm going to talk about. But first, I really want to go over why these patterns happen, because our unconscious mind is attracted to someone who's similar to our caretakers as a child, or the opposite of them, because it really is wanting you to have a happy ending this time around. But because our partner is unskilled and limited as our parents were, it's not going to have a happy ending if we remain in this unconscious pattern. So if you approached me as a couple and you were both willing to grow and learn to meet each other's needs, then I could help you grow together. And that's how I work with couples. But since you're single, you can break the pattern yourself and then start attracting men who are loving and kind and generous and responsible and fun, and all the qualities that you want in a partner. And no, I didn't personally find the last one in existence for myself. There's plenty out there. And I like this slide just to kind of lighten the topic, that people always say there's plenty of fish in the sea. And yeah, but I got my eye fixed on that specific emotionally distant salmon who has commitment issues. So even though there's plenty of fish, you want to find the right one and change the pattern. So the only way out of this pattern, like I alluded to, is to learn how to give yourself the kind of love and care that you attracted as a child. And this will reprogram your brain that that's what you deserve. And you'll start to attract and be attracted to more loving partners. So Albert Einstein said, everything is energy, and that is it, vibration and frequency. When you love yourself completely, then you won't be attracted to people who don't respect you and love you for who you most deeply are. And so the way to do this, and this is, thank you for sharing. I won't share your name, the person who's typing into the comments, just in case you don't want me to, because your name won't be on the YouTube replay. But that she's saying that I hide behind my intellect. And thank you for sharing that. I used to do that too. That was actually my biggest one. I used to be, hiding behind that I was smart and I would love to share my ideas with men. And we would get into these amazing philosophical, spiritual conversations. But because I wasn't sharing my feelings, that didn't really inspire him to stay connected and committed to me. And then we would wind up growing distant over time. So that was the pattern that I got caught in. So thank you for sharing that. So emotional needs are things like to be seen and cared about, and to have someone have your back, and to be loved for who we are, to be loved for our feelings and our opinions and our emotions, and to be listened to and empathized with and collaborated with. Those are things like emotional needs. And we all have them. And there's a difference between having needs and being needy, because being needy is when we push our needs on people. So that's why it's so important to be able to meet our own needs while we're single. So what that might look like, and what my practice was when I learned how to feel my feelings and love my own feelings, was I had a journaling practice where I would write down my feelings, and I learned how to give myself compassion and empathy for my own feelings. And I would do that on a daily basis. And then I would look at, what are my needs? And if my needs were connection, or if they were to be seen and heard, I would look at how I can get those met in my life, both by myself, like journaling was a way of seeing and hearing myself, or I would open up emotionally to my friends because that seemed safer. Or to family members that I was close to because that seemed safer. But then that reflected back to me that my feelings are actually important. And I was receiving my emotional needs like companionship and acceptance and intimacy with the people in my life. And then I had the courage to express it with the men in my life once that was getting met in my life now. So when you're able to get your emotional needs met before you meet a man, you'll occur to him as confident and self-assured and a keeper. Because then you won't settle for a man who can't meet your needs, but you won't be needy. You'll be able to enjoy the way he meets your needs, like affection and attention, but you won't be starved for those things because you're also getting it for friends and family and yourself. So does that make sense? So most women never learn this. And when they do attract a partner after a few years, they become unsatisfied because they never discovered what their most important emotional needs are and how to truly meet them. Because most of us know what we want, but do we know what we most deeply need? We usually have a list of qualities that we want in a partner, like he has to be tall, or he has to have a successful career, or have similar interests. But you'll only be satisfied if he has qualities that can help you meet your deepest emotional needs. And I have a process that it teaches you how to identify your deepest needs and how to get them met now, and how to identify the qualities that your partner needs to have in order to meet those needs, because that's the only way that you're going to be happy in the long term. And I cover this in my one-on-one and group coaching programs. We don't have time to go over that process now, but I'll give you some examples of emotional needs so you can start to identify what they are. And that's something that you can also ask me in the Q&A. I can help you figure out what your emotional needs are. But there are things like acceptance and affection, appreciation or closeness or intimacy, to really feel like someone has our back and like we're a priority, to feel like we have mutuality or nurturing, collaboration, like we're really working together, security, like, you have some kind of commitment, to really to see and be seen, or trust, or mutual understanding. So those are just an example of some emotional needs. So the question then becomes, how can you get those met in your life now, with yourself and with the people in your life now, to really feel like I'm getting my emotional needs met? Because that's what gives us the courage to feel like we deserve that, And then we actually won't be attracted to men who don't meet our needs, who can't meet our needs. Like, we'll be able to tell if he's emotionally available, or we'll be able to tell the red flags that he shows up with, that he's going to be cold or distant or untrustworthy. Because we're getting our needs met, we develop a barometer for, who's a quality man and who's not. So, anyway, I'm going to be answering your questions at the end. So, I'd like to go over the skills. And after we go over the skills, then I'll answer everyone's questions, because I'm sure that a lot of people have questions about these emotional needs, and I would love to answer them at the end. Then we can really go into depth into what these needs are and how you can get them met in your life. So now I'm going to share about the third pitfall, which is our relationship skills or lack thereof. Because you can be clear on what kind of man you're looking for, and you can even meet him. But if you don't know how to turn date 1 into date 2, or how to share your feelings and desires in an inspiring way, which comes from really honoring our own emotional needs, that's the next step, is communicating them, or how to hear him when he's upset and not take it personally, or how to inspire a man to deeper commitment, then you might attract a great guy, but then not have the skills to keep the relationship going long term. So I'll share the 10 skills with you now, and I'd like you to keep an awareness of which ones you are good at and which ones you still need to learn. And there's no fault or make wrong in it, because like I said, most of us just didn't have these skills modeled for us. And I spent years studying with the top relationship experts and learning how to implement these skills. So I'm here to shorten the learning curve for you, but most people don't know these skills. So there's nothing wrong if you feel like, oh, there's one that I'm not good at. Okay, so the first skill is clarity of vision and values. So most women rely on chemistry to determine their ideal match, but chemistry only lasts so long until you have compatible values and visions for what you want to create. So after we identify the most important qualities that your man has to have in order to meet your deepest emotional needs, I help my clients determine their important values and what they want their relationship to look and feel like. So I'll give you a minute now to think about what you really desire in your dream relationship. And really allow yourself to dream big and ask yourself, if you're going to have everything that you desire, do you want dating to culminate in marriage? Or maybe you want another kind of life partnership where you support each other and whom you're becoming. So there's no right or wrong here, but it's important to own what we want. And do you want kids? That's a really important aspect. And do you want monogamy? Because that's not a given in today's day and age either, but it's really important to own what you want. And what does your ideal home life with your dream partner look like and feel like? So just take a moment to envision the type of home that you want to have, and where you're living, and what it feels like to wake up together in the morning, and what it is that you do for fun during your days off, and all the different ways that you enjoy each other's company. So I'll just give you 30 seconds to flesh out that vision. All the different ways that you have fun together, and all the ways that he shows up, and what it is that he does when he whisks you off your feet, and maybe where you travel together, and what it's like to parent together if you have kids, if you want to have kids, and all the different ways that you give and receive love. So you can continue to do that, and I'll move on with the webinar. It's important that you clarify this at the outset so that you can get curious in the beginning of your relationship with a man if he shares the same dreams as you. And many women are scared of scaring men away by saying what they want, but there's a way that I teach women to say it in an open and curious way. Like, you're not asking if he wants to get married on the first date, but you can say, "Hey, Ted, I'm curious. Do you believe that love can last forever?" So you're just asking him about his beliefs. And it'll inspire the right man. So if he gets scared away then, he wasn't looking for the same thing. And that opens up your time to meet someone who wants the same things that you want. So that's something that I help women to do, is to clarify how to speak about their desires in a way that inspires men. So skill number 2 is how to meet quality men. Because I hear from women all the time, where are all the good men? I only meet losers. Or I'm not crazy about the man I'm with, but I'm afraid that if I leave him, I won't meet someone else. And I hear this all the time. So ladies, let me tell you, there's plenty of quality, commitment-friendly men out there looking to sweep a woman off her feet. But do you know where to find him? Because there's a skill to finding men who match your values. And you also have to know how to flirt with men so that you literally attract quality men wherever you go. And if you're online dating, then you have to know how to write the right kind of online profile that attracts quality men and repels the losers. And there's an art to this as well. And you also have to know, if you're dating online, how to go from chatting online to meeting in person, because that's the only way that you'll be able to tell if he's right for you or not just chatting on the internet. And once you master the skill of meeting quality men, you'll never have to settle for one who isn't right for you. You'll just say, oh, he's not who I'm looking for, but I'm sure someone else is. You'll feel an abundance and that you can choose whom you want to be with. So that's the law of attraction, being clear on who you want to attract, knowing it, and just being the person who's going to attract attracts like. That's the law of attraction. Now, the next skill, the law of polarity, is about opposites. The most important opposite that creates attraction is masculine and feminine energy, which isn't about gender or sexual orientation. Both men and women have both masculine and feminine energies, and you can choose to be in your masculine or feminine as you go through your day. But to create passion and attraction in a romantic relationship, one partner chooses to be in their masculine and the other partner chooses to be in their feminine, and then you have passion. It's like two poles of a battery. The electricity flows between opposite poles. And yeah, someone just shared meetmindful.com, which I've heard of, and it's still starting out, but I have heard that that's a great way to meet men that share your values. So thank you, Liette, for sharing that. So the law of polarity isn't about gender or sexual orientation. Like I said, it's about energy. So masculine energy is strategizing, logistics, making decisions and doing, analyzing and solving problems, and providing. And feminine energy is feeling and sharing our feelings, receiving, being in touch with our intuition, and just being. Following and collaborating. So not just blindly following, but really collaborating by sharing our feelings and desires and boundaries in a way that's collaborative. And the spiritual practice of surrender and really opening our heart to what is with compassion. So that's the feminine and the skills of the feminine. So you can think waltzing across the ballroom with your partner. He leads and you follow, but you also influence. He chooses the direction based on how you're expressing yourself, so you both feel good. So the follower isn't being subservient, right? Like in this picture, you can tell she's not being subservient. She's expressing herself. And he notices how she's expressing herself and leads in a direction that makes them both feel good. So that's the paradigm. It's not being submissive or subservient. It's really collaborating in our feminine. So now both men and women have both masculine and feminine energies within us, and we use them in different situations in our lives. A man is in his feminine when he's creative, talks about his feelings, and enjoys the moment rather than achieving, which is important, right? That's why it's like a yin yang. It's not like black and white, man are masculine, women are feminine. We're in our feminine when we enjoy sensuality and music and art, fabrics, colors, textures, perfumes and candles, taking a romantic walk on the beach in the moonlight, or really, like I said, sharing our feelings, our desires, and our boundaries in an inspiring way. But we've been taught in our culture, in order to be successful in today's world, that we have to be in our masculine. We need to plan and strategize and achieve and accomplish. We probably need to use those qualities at work. Like I'm more in my masculine right now because I'm communicating a point. So if you find yourself making to-do lists and feeling really good accomplishing goals and giving the people in your life advice, then you're operating from your masculine during those times. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I'll be in my masculine with you for when I'm answering your questions, probably. And we'll also tap into my feminine openness and receptivity and compassion, right? So I'll be balanced. But there's nothing wrong with us being in our masculine. It's just that when we're in our masculine with men, it actually kills his romantic feelings. Because a masculine man is going to want a woman who's really allowing him to pick her up and sweep her off her feet, who's allowing him to lead, who's receptive, who shares her feelings openly, who allows herself to be vulnerable, who really is in touch with her sensuality and creativity and intuition. So if you want a man who's ambitious and who wants to lead and who wants to make the plans, then you need to cultivate your feminine qualities in order to inspire a man who has more of these masculine qualities. So that just means that as women, we can change hats from being in our masculine at work to letting my man run the relationship. So it's really about us stopping doing everything and stopping leading and telling him what to do and start inspiring him to do more, which comes from us being in our feminine. So this may go against what we've been taught about being equals, but we are equals. We're just choosing to embody complementary energies because men are compelled and entranced by feminine energy. So when we can learn to express our feelings and emotions and sensuality in an inspiring way instead of a demanding way, then he feels compelled to please us and take actions that make us feel good. And when we're really empowered in our feminine, that means that it incorporates everything that we've learned so far about our empowered beliefs and meeting our own emotional needs. That's what allows us to really attract men that want to meet our needs and want to give it to us because we know how to receive. And we're actually not going to be attracted to men who don't want to give to us and make us happy and are self-centered, because we're the ones, the feminine is actually the one who's self-centered, not in a narcissistic way, but who's really in touch with our needs and desires and knows how to communicate them in an inspiring way. That's what actually allows us to be cherished and adored instead of pursuing him. So that was the first 3 skills. And there's 7 more that you need to know to navigate through the stages of dating and creating lasting love. And like I said, these weren't modeled for us. And it's where relationships that could have blossomed wither and die because the partners didn't have these skills. So let's go through them and consider which ones you need to amp up or even learn. And like I said, there's nothing wrong if you need to learn them. It's just that these weren't modeled. And that's why we have so much pain and drama in finding the one and keeping him. That's why so many women are struggling. So skill number 4 is how to create magnetic connection on a date. So that's what really allows the man to ask us out again and turn date 1 into date 2 into the romance of a lifetime. So for example, I worked with a woman who met attractive men, but they didn't call her back and she wasn't sure what she was doing wrong. So I helped her to see how she was inadvertently pushing men away because she didn't understand how to create this magnetic connection. So when you know how to screen your dates deeply and authentically and ask these deeper questions and create deep, fun, playful connection, then you'll just have wonderful conversations, even if they're not a match. And that's what makes dating fun and will lead to you meeting Mr. Right. So if dating doesn't occur to you as fun right now, then this might be the skill that's missing. And remember, at the end of this webinar, I'm going to share a little known tip on how to create a magnetic connection on a date. And that's, of course, just one of the aspects of creating magnetic connection, but it's very powerful. So skill number 5 is how to screen out the wrong men so you don't waste your time. Because we need to determine deal breakers and red flags and be able to screen out the wrong people. So the question is, do you know what your deal breakers are? And do you know how to recognize red flags? Because we need to be unwilling to compromise and settle on what we really need to be happy and to feel deeply loved and safe and fulfilled. And this means that we have to know how to let go of who is not right for us after a few dates. And this also includes setting healthy boundaries, how to stick up for yourself in a collaborative way that's not yelling at him or making him wrong, but really sticking up for yourself when something feels wrong. so that you can tell if he can honor your boundaries and respect your feelings. And we need to learn how to reject men in a respectful way when we realize that he's not the one, rather than dwelling on not wanting to reject people. And this also means dealing with rejection of us in a healthy way, to not take it personally, to ask yourself, what can I learn from this, to make positive meaning out of it? This is what allows us to stay resilient until we find the one. It means simply telling yourself, okay, he wasn't right for me. Next. Maybe you've taken a long break from dating, and if you have this skill, then you can learn to jump back in there and stay resilient. So skill number 6 is how to navigate the first few months to inspire deep love with the right man. So there's many factors that come into play in the first few months. Many women find themselves stuck in this stage where they have these several month-long relationships and they can't get past that stage into a deeper commitment because dating has changed a lot, even in the past 10 years with the internet. The thing is, we can't make assumptions anymore. We can't assume that just because men want to see us often, or whether he says he wants the same things, or whether he has sex with us, that he's looking to be exclusive or get married within our time frame. So what I see is a lot of women that I coach is that they go on a few dates and the guy will start professing his romantic feelings for her. And then she starts to fall in love and give him a lot of affection and has expectations about how often he should call her, that he shouldn't see other women, and asks, where is it going, in a serious way. And all this leads to is the man feeling smothered because he doesn't want to have these serious conversations and these assumptions. He doesn't want this put on him. He wants to talk about these things in an inspiring, fun, playful way. Or maybe he's not looking for what you want. But it's really about having these fun, playful conversations to determine if you want the same things, instead of having it be a serious thing that then causes him to think that, like, oh, I'm not looking for something serious. And I don't have rules for when to sleep with a guy because guys don't like it anyway when we're just following a rule instead of our intuition. But what happens biologically is that our bodies don't know that there's birth control. Our bodies think that we can get pregnant. So our bodies release a lot of a hormone called oxytocin when we have an orgasm with a man. And it makes many women develop a deep emotional bond with a man that comes with all these expectations that he interprets as her being needy and clingy, because oxytocin doesn't affect men the same way, unfortunately. So of course it's okay to have desires, but when we put them on him, he'll feel like it's too much. So in my coaching program, I help women clarify their boundaries around sex and how to ask for what they want in a playful way. So then he can open his heart and actually provide us with what we want and have us receive it and then have him feel good for giving it, which starts a positive feedback loop where he starts to open his heart to you, which leads him to wanting to move the relationship forward, which is the next skill, is inspiring commitment. So that's not just having these playful conversations about where the relationship is going, but it's also how to decide when to be exclusive with a man. Because a lot of women are stuck in the opposite role where, like, he wants to be exclusive with right away, but how do you know that he's really right for you? So it's how to know when to commit and keep inspiring deeper commitment. Because think about it. It used to be that women needed commitment before she had sex because she could get pregnant. But now that there is birth control and the sexual revolution, we're having sex before a guy makes a lifelong commitment, most of us. So if you agree to be exclusive with him with no idea about where the relationship is headed, he could just be saying, I want to have all the benefits of partnership, regular sex, companionship, and without making a commitment. And what's going to motivate him to propose if he's getting everything he needs without it? So that's where inspiring him comes in. It's not about making ultimatums and, sharing the consequences with him or getting angry about it. He really needs you to be able to speak about your desires in an inspiring way, how to fully receive and appreciate how he is meeting your desires, and talking about what your desires provide for you so that he can be inspired to offer more and more commitment. And there's an art to doing this effectively so he's inspired to step up, because that's how it was with me and my partner. In the beginning of our relationship, he was like, oh, I'm not looking for anything serious. And by me really implementing these skills, that's what allowed him to, now he's actually even more committed than I am. I still have some doubts, but he's like, I'm 100% sure about you. I'm going to break through all your doubts. I'm going to meet all your emotional needs. I'm going to be there for you no matter what. I'm going to support you in all ways. And I mean, of course, I'm committed too, but sometimes like I'm not sure, and then we have these conversations where we open up my feelings, and then here's the need that's not getting met, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna meet it, and then I'm like, oh, okay, then I'm more sure than I was before. So it's this wonderful dance of how to make the man be moving the relationship forward instead of us having to talk about it and belabor it. All right, so skill number 8 is how to harmonize differences, because men and women, I mean, yes, these are generalities, and some men are more like women and some women are more like men, and there's nothing wrong with that. But about 80% of us actually do fit into the generalities of the differences between men and women. Like, for example, men have a larger corpus callosum, which is the part that separates the left and right hemispheres of their brain. And that's what allows him to focus really intently, but he's not good at multitasking. But we actually, so like when he's watching TV and we interrupt him, then he's like, get away, I'm doing something. And we feel like, what? The TV's more important than me? But actually, it's hard for his brain to switch roles so quickly. So there's so many ways that most women misunderstand men. And then he's either going to get angry and critical of you, or else he'll just feel distant, like he can't be himself around you. And then he won't show you as much attention or affection without even knowing why. And then you'll feel abandoned and disregarded and unimportant. So my system teaches the key differences between men and women and how to harmonize them so that he'll feel so seen and understood and loved by you that he'll see you as the only woman in the world for him. All right, so skill number 9. Oh, oops, that was skill number 8. Skill number 9 is how to have deep conversations that inspire long-term emotional intimacy. So this is how to really open up and be vulnerable and authentic, and how to inspire him to deeper levels of emotional intimacy. So here's the skill that allows you to talk about your needs in an inspiring way and your feelings in a way, like how to share any emotion, even anger or worry, in a way that opens his heart and draws him closer to you. And I have a 5-step process to ask for what you want in a way that works like magic to inspire him to give it to you. So this is the key ingredient to place men under your romantic spell and become completely addicted to pleasing you. My partner tells everyone, this stuff works. I know she's using it on me, but honestly, I love it. And I still feel compelled to please her. And yes, you said I could say that. So this is sort of the corollary to discovering your needs. This is about how to really open up and be vulnerable and communicate them, because that's what really makes the difference between men feeling inspired to meet them versus if we communicate them in a way that's subtly making him wrong, then that pushes him away. All right, and then skill number 10 is how to transform conflict into unshakable love. Because even if he is Mr. Right, every couple encounters conflict. And if you sweep it under the carpet or engage in power struggle, then romance and love fizzles away after a couple of years. And that's what used to happen to me in my 20s. So I teach how to transform conflict into an opportunity to discover each other's needs and meet them on a deeper level, inspiring deep intimacy and feeling closer after a fight than before. And one of my clients said about my conflict resolution process, she said, I love that Valerie doesn't teach about the perfect conflict-free relationship that some couples programs offer. She teaches how to utilize conflicts to get close. And it's not just a bunch of formulas to use, but she has a deep and wide range understanding of the dynamics between people and can teach how to navigate those waters with love and honor for everyone's perspective. She understands how challenging things can feel, and she knows that there are ways to get through it and feel better. My husband and I used to argue a lot, and now our relationship is feeling better and better. So those are the 10 skills. I'll just read them in case people are listening. So skill number 1 is clarity of vision and values, so you attract someone who's compatible in all ways. Skill 2 is how to meet quality men. Skill 3 is how to master the law of polarity, so you're magnetic. Skill 4 is how to create this magnetic connection on a date, which I'll share a little bit in a few minutes too. Skill 5 is how to screen out the wrong men so you don't waste your time. Skill 6 is how to navigate the first few months to inspire deep love with Mr. Right. Skill 7 is how to inspire commitment that lasts a lifetime. Skill 8 is how to harmonize differences so you both feel seen and understood and loved. Skill 9 is having those deep, authentic, vulnerable conversations that inspire emotional intimacy. And skill 10 is how to transform conflict into win-win solutions for unshakable love. So this might seem like a lot, but these are the skills that not only allow you to attract Mr. Right, but they're the skills that you need to make love last an entire lifetime. And they'll help you relate to your friends and family and coworkers in an empowered way to help you with your family life and how to work with your male coworkers, because I teach you about how men are wired. Women who understand how men are wired have more success in all areas, at work, when you're traveling, and with your father, brother, uncles, and children too. So imagine the possibility of learning the skills to finally attract a relationship where you feel loved and cherished and adored, like I feel and like my clients feel. It is possible once you apply these skills, and it can be easier than you think once you learn them. You have them for life. It's just like riding a bike. So I'd like you to take a moment to think about which of these 10 skills you have and which you still need to learn. And feel free to type in the chat box which of these skills you feel are causing you not to have your Mr. Right. And then we can talk about that in the Q&A. So I'm going to share with you how I can support you, and then we'll get to the connection tool and the questions. So I work with women both one-on-one and in groups to learn to master these skills so that you can attract and keep your Mr. Right for a lifetime. But I only take a limited number of women, and I want to make sure that working together is really a match. So if what I've said resonates with you and you feel that you can use some support on having a plan to attract and keep your Mr. Right, then I'm offering you an opportunity to apply for a free 90-minute relationship breakthrough session with me, where I use a proprietary process to help you become crystal clear on your patterns or themes that sabotage you from attracting your Mr. Right and keeping him for a lifetime. And then we create a customized plan to help you to reprogram your limiting beliefs and to develop the skills to meet your emotional needs, and how to really develop these 10 skills to inspire him to meet the right man and inspire him to commit and set you up for a lifetime of love, intimacy, and passion. And if we agree that this feels good to explore, then after this free session, the reason that I take 90 minutes is because I really want to get your story, and I really want to help you create a specific customized plan with no obligation to work with me whatsoever. But if we agree that it feels good to explore working together, then I'll tell you about my individual and group coaching programs and how they can support you to implement the plan in the fastest way possible, and for you to truly break free of any of the beliefs and patterns that have held you back. So this relationship breakthrough session is totally free, and it may be the exact piece of support that you need to finally transform your love life and get you exactly where you want to be. So the link to apply is on the bottom of the screen, but I'm also going to share it in the offer here so that you'll see it in the chat box. So there's the offer. So all you need to do is click on the box that says apply here. And if you're watching the YouTube replay, then just go to the link on the bottom of the slide, which is coachvaleriegreen.com/clarity, which is www.coach and then VALERIE and then green with an E at the end, GREENE.com/clarity. And so there's a few questions for you to answer. And if it seems like a match, then I will send you the link to put yourself on my calendar to experience this 90-minute session totally for free. So I want to help you to meet your Mr. Right and get you the love life that you deserve. I get emails all the time from women thanking me for the support I'm giving them, and I really want to help you too. So thank you for staying until the end of the webinar. And as promised, I want to share a little known connection tool that helps you to create a magnetic connection on a date. So, and then we'll get to the questions. So most people don't understand that 90% of what is communicated is done through tone of voice and body language. Only 10% is the words you say. So I'm going to share with you how to use your body language to create a deep and mesmerizing connection. So first, I'd like you to focus on yourself, and you can do this now. So I'd like you to notice how you're breathing. Are you taking deep, relaxed belly breaths, or are you taking shallow breaths? So I'd like you to just take some nice deep breaths. And what this communicates is that you're comfortable, even if you're feeling uncomfortable. If you breathe like you're comfortable, then he'll think you are. And notice if your shoulders are tense and relax them. So this is what to put our attention on if we feel nervous. Like a lot of times we go into our head and start analyzing things, or we start worrying. So if you notice yourself doing that on a date, just put your attention on your breathing and put your attention on where in your body you might be tense and consciously relax it. So that way he'll notice that you seem more comfortable, even if you're not, which is the prerequisite for connection. So once you're focusing on yourself, now we'll focus on how to connect with him. So the first step to doing that is to make lots of eye contact, even if it's uncomfortable. He won't be able to tell that you're uncomfortable. He'll just feel your attention on him and he'll like it. So then we'll focus on connecting with him to build a deep sense of connection and trust with him. And this is about matching and mirroring him in a subtle way. It's not about like parroting him. But you can experiment with noticing how he's breathing and breathe at the same rate. You can tell by watching his shoulders rise and fall, because men feel a hypnotic connection when they're breathing in sync with you. So you can use this tip to actually bond with anyone, even at job interviews. It works really well to have people trust you and want to align with you. And then the second part of this is to mirror his body language in a subtle way. Like I said, not parroting, but like if he leans in, wait a few seconds and lean forward too. Then he'll begin to feel more relaxed and open around you, because when you move like someone, then he feels that you're like him, and then he's more likely to like you if he feels like you're like him. Makes sense? So I encourage you to try it. So I want to thank you for attending this webinar, and now I'll end the slide presentation and get to the Q&A. It's my deepest privilege to get to do what I love, and it's really because of you that I get to do that privilege. So I thank you. So click on the link to the right or on the screen in order to attract your Mr. Right. Say yes to yourself in the relationship of your dreams. Let's get you to feeling wanted and beautiful and knowing that you're loved, because there's just so much inner strength in having a secure, loving partnership, and I want that for you. And I'm your relationship mentor, here to show you how to have it, because if I can have it and my clients can have it, then you can have it too. So I can't wait to connect with you and support you in making your dreams come true too. So I'll take down the offer so I can see the chat box, but I'd love it if we can connect, because right now there is an opportunity to raise your hand and then come on live with me. But of course, that's not the full 90 minutes that you'll get with the strategy session, with the relationship breakthrough session. So that's the opportunity that I'm offering. So now I'm going to stop the presentation, and then you can all see me again. Hi. All right. So I want to encourage you to ask questions. First, I will address the question that Liat shared earlier. At least I'm assuming it's a question. She didn't share it in the form of a question, but hopefully you want me to answer it. So she's saying that it makes sense that we need to meet our own emotional needs, but I don't have friends nor family who satisfy those needs. I feel like I need that first to have a firm foundation before I can be ready for a relationship. And that's actually a really astute observation, because a lot of times we don't have friends or family that can meet our emotional needs. So the first step that I guide women to do, the first step is how to meet our needs for ourselves. And that's not the be all end all, because obviously we're social creatures. We need to have friends to connect with, and people that we feel like are really there for us. But meeting our own emotional needs is important first. So like I said, when I'll just use an example of my own emotional needs, and feel free to share more about yours or what you think yours are, and I can help you to develop an awareness of what yours are. But with me, I had never really experienced empathy as a kid. My parents were very loving. They just didn't, they're not really that, they don't focus on emotions that much. I mean, they were certainly like, it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be sad when your pet dies or whatever. But I really needed empathy, and they were very solution oriented, which is how most people are. So there's nothing wrong with that, right? They were very loving, but I'm a very emotional person. And because I never really experienced somebody being like, empathy is like when someone's like, wow, that's really hard. Tell me what that's like for you. And they're just curious, and they want to hear more about how you're feeling, and giving you compassion and listening, non-judgmental listening, and just letting you talk and open up and discover what you need in that moment. So I hadn't experienced that growing up. And so when my partner first gave that to me, like several years ago at this point, I mean, in my late 20s, now I'm almost 40, I was like, whoa, that is amazing. I didn't even know I needed that. So I first experienced that from him, but then I learned to give it to myself. So what I would actually do, because I wasn't used to acknowledging my feelings. I was just used to kind of going up into solution mode if I had a problem, trying to solve it right away, but without really giving myself empathy for my feelings. So I started journaling every day, my feelings and my needs. I studied nonviolent communication, which is a wonderful way to learn how to discover your feelings and needs. But I also teach that, of course, now in my programs, because I was trained to teach nonviolent communication. But I also just integrated my own system for discovering your needs. So, but what I did when I was learning it is I actually, several times a day when I had a feeling, I would write down what that feeling was, and I would write down what the need was. And then I would talk about how can I get that need met in my life now. So like, let's say that need is for empathy and there's no one around. I can give myself empathy. I could literally do a loving kindness meditation where I'm going inward and saying, I hear that I'm feeling sad. I'm giving myself compassion for that. It's okay to feel that way. What do I need to comfort and soothe myself right now? Maybe I need to sit down and make a warm cup of tea or take a bath, and really just soothe and nurture myself. So that's the first step, is meeting our own needs. But then after that, of course, what I support women in doing is going out and finding girlfriends. And depending on where you live, there's several ways to find meetups or online communities where you can then meet in person. I'm in New York City, so it's very easy to meet people, but there's all kinds of places to meet girlfriends, like taking adult education classes, because they have that in every area, where you then meet people who fit into your life that can meet your emotional needs, because now that you're meeting them yourself, you know how to recognize other people that can meet them. And I also teach how to test people to see if they can meet your emotional needs in like a normal way, not in a weird, crazy way, so that you have this solid foundation of then having friends that do meet your emotional needs. And once you have that, then it'll be easier to open up on a date, because then you're not putting all your eggs in the basket of this guy to have your needs met, because you have more support in your life. So that's that is what I recommend to women, is that they actually find ways of making new connections with girlfriends in conjunction with dating men. Because if we do put all of the eggs in the basket of our man meeting our needs, he'll actually feel like that's a burden. And if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question, Liat, and feel free um, to share more. Yes, she's saying nonviolent communication is a game changer. I learned about it at a retreat last fall. Yeah, and the way that I really implemented it was to literally make, I mean, this was me, but when I work with clients, there's several ways that I help them to learn it, because some people like journaling, some don't. Some people like meditating, some don't. So it's really about finding what works for you. But for me, I did both. I journaled several times a day. What are my feelings and needs? Just to develop that sense of self-empathy. And then how can I get my needs met from many sources? But I also then this is kind of embarrassing, but like when my partner and I got into a fight, when I was learning this, I actually hung a sheet of feelings and needs up on my wall. And then when we were getting up and getting into a fight, I would take a time out and I would go look at the sheet, and he would make fun of me, but then he liked it because I would come back and I would be vulnerable and I would be able to share what was going on for me at a deeper level. And then I would be able to listen to him and be curious about his needs. So that was a game changer for us, because then we stopped fighting and we learned how to have these connected conversations instead. So yeah. So I know Liat is asking all the questions. Feel free others to ask questions, but obviously I'll keep answering hers because they're good questions. But other people can chime in if you want. Okay, so she's asking, sorry, I have to scroll up here. Do the majority of your clients meet men via online dating? Yes, the majority of my clients do go online as part of their strategy, and I don't require it. I'm very flexible in terms of when people work with me. Of if they don't like online dating, then there's many ways to meet guys in person, and especially guys that match your values. You know, like whatever your values are. If you're a spiritual person, go to different spiritual communities. If you value service, do community service. If you're into sports, there's tons of men there. You know, if you have particular hobbies, go meet men that have take classes in those things where you meet people. Adult education classes are great because they're where you meet people that want to learn and grow, and people there are usually single because, when we have kids, we tend not to have as much time for those things. So, there's many ways to meet guys in person, but yeah, I do recommend going online as a strategy in conjunction with meeting men in person, because when you think about it, when we're in our 20s, and some of you might be in your 20s, so that's great. There's nothing, wrong with learning these skills when you're younger. I think it's great. But once we do get older, the bar scene gets old, and there's just not necessarily as many people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s going out to these adult education classes and taking dance lessons or wherever it is that you go out to try to meet people. But hundreds of thousands of people are online. Millions of people are online now. But like hundreds of people, if you live in a small town, hundreds of people are going to be online that are within a 50-mile radius of where you are that you would never run into otherwise. And so I do think it's a really good strategy to just meet people that you otherwise wouldn't have met. But then it's important to be able to describe in your online profile, who you are on a deeper level, and actually make it interesting. And yes, of course, pictures are important, but the quality men do read your profile and they want to see that you can express yourself in like a fun, playful way where you're telling stories, not just sharing, adjectives, like not just like I'm fun and smart and nice and giving, and these are my hobbies. It's like really telling stories about yourself, because men are visuals. So it's not just about the pictures. It's about visually demonstrating what it's like to be with you. And that's something that I help my clients to do, is to write these online profiles that are inspiring to the right men and that turn off the wrong men. Because you actually really want to share what your values are and what kind of relationship you're looking for in your profile, and then how to screen men to tell, because there's things that you can look for where you can identify red flags, and you can identify if he's not looking for a committed relationship just by the way he shares himself in his profile, and you can kind of get a sense for his values. So it's an art to learn how to meet men online, and I do recommend it as a strategy. But like I said, it's not like absolutely necessary. I mean, I haven't actually done that much online dating myself because I've always just been good at meeting men. Like I shared in the video for this webinar, my challenge has never been about meeting men, but that's why I'm really just so good at helping women discover how to meet men, because I've always been good at it. My challenge, though, was learning how to keep love alive past a couple of years. I had several relationships in my 20s that lasted a couple of years and then fizzled out. And that was the pattern that I got caught in that I shared about. And that's what really caused me to study with the top relationship teachers, and just this cycle of fighting and feeling distant that I got into in my long-term relationships that sought me to teach all these emotional healing and communication modalities. And that was my challenge. But I've always been good at meeting men. So that's also something that I can relate, because many of my clients have challenges meeting men, but that's of course what I teach them how to do. But I haven't done that much online dating myself, but I've actually taken several other relationship teachers courses on online dating, because I'm always committed to knowing the best tools and strategies. And so then I support women on online dating and the tips and strategies that I know work for them. So I'm committed to always giving you the best quality and the most up-to-date information, even though I'm not currently online dating because I've been in a committed relationship for several years. But of course, I'm keeping up to date with, what the sites are. And like Liat shared, Meet Mindful. That's a wonderful site if you're a spiritual person. There's also spiritualsingles.com, which I haven't really heard that many people are on there either, but it can't hurt to put a profile up there some time. So Suzanne G says, superb suggestions. Thank you. Okay. I hope I was pronouncing your name right. Batya says that sometimes when I'm open and magnetic, men I'm not interested in get attached. Right. What's the best way to stay open and deal with unwanted interest without hurting others? Yeah. Okay. That's a really good question. And that certainly happened to me too. Because that's how I've always been good at meeting men, is because I've always been open. My energy has always been open. And I just like connecting with people. I like making eye contact. I like flirting. And so, yeah, then you're also going to attract the attention of men that you don't want. And so that's a really good question. So that is about having really good boundaries and actually not being scared of rejecting men and hurting their feelings, because yes, their feelings might be hurt if you reject them, but they actually, what's the word? Like, they would rather have your rejection in the beginning than have you pretend to like them and then not know what's going on and be confused, if that makes sense. Like, they'd rather just know flat out. So that's skill number 4, which is how to really have the right boundaries and let go of men that aren't right for you. But it's not about being closed or cold. So it's about staying open. And if a man, I went on plenty of first dates where I just wasn't attracted to the guy after the first date. And, he would ask me out again and I would be like, I had a great time with you. So the way to do this in a caring way, in an open way, is to give him appreciation and acknowledgement first. Because that leaves him feeling good about himself, even if he feels rejected, but that's his own stuff. So I would be like, I had such a great time with you. I enjoyed, the dinner. It was such a great restaurant. I really enjoyed the food. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed talking about, X, Y, and Z that we talked about. But I'm not feeling the chemistry. I'm just not feeling that we're a match. Sorry. And leaving it at that. And if he asks why, or tries to convince you, like, you don't want to answer his question why, because then that actually leaves him to argue about it. Like, if you're like, oh, well, you're just not, whatever it is, enough, then he'll try to argue with you about how he is, So the way to share about that is just to say, it's just my intuition. I just get an intuitive feel that you're not a match, because he can't argue with that. Like every time I get an intuitive hit that someone's not a match and I don't listen to it, something goes wrong. So I have to listen to my intuition, because it's true, right? It's true that, I mean, that's part of why you're not attracted to him. It's your intuition, because that's something that he can't argue with. He can't be like, don't listen to your intuition. So hopefully that makes sense, Batya. I know that like a lot of times I do feel bad rejecting guys, and I've certainly like had numerous examples of rejecting men in hurtful ways. Like I remember when I was in high school, I dated a guy for a few months and I decided I didn't like him. And then I was like mean to him so that he would dump me first, so I didn't have to dump him. It was horrible. So I'm just saying, like, I've certainly done the being closed thing. We've all done it, right? So, but we have to forgive ourselves for being immature in the past. So, but we have to understand, it's like a lot of times girls will just be sort of coy and like, not reject him, but just not get back to him. Guys do the same thing, right? It's like we kind of ghost the person, but then they never get closure. They're like, why did she not call me back? Right? I mean, because we don't feel good about when we're on the other side. So I really think it makes sense to let someone go and say like, I'm just not getting that click, I just don't feel like we're a match. And that way it actually gives both of you freedom. That makes sense. So, Liat saying, I don't like that site, and yes, not enough men out there. I imagine you mean spiritual singles, and I agree. I mean, I'm just sharing the different sites. I usually encourage people to do Match, because there are a lot of high quality people on there. But there's a lot of other ones. It really just depends on, like, different sites work for different people, and that's one thing that I help you evaluate. I mean, of course, like, why not do the free ones like Plenty of Fish and OkCupid? But it makes sense to also do some of the paid ones, because then if you want a man who's going to invest something, then you also want to invest something. And it kind of weeds out the people that aren't serious, the paid sites. So I think it's important to do both. And Batya says that makes sense. Great. Thanks so much. So, yeah, it's been 90 minutes and I'm happy to stay on longer if people have more questions. And so last call. I can't say that you don't have to go home, but you can stay here, because I imagine you are home if you're watching this. But last call for questions. I'm happy to stay on for as long as people have questions. And I love answering questions and I love giving advice, but remember, that's being in my masculine. That's important when we're in our feminine, to be able to receive and appreciate what he's giving. And if we don't like it, to be able to share, to still receive and appreciate it, but then share what would feel even better. To be receptive and to be open and vulnerable and share our feelings and our desires and our boundaries in a way that's collaborative. And I actually just taught, I went to Canada for a couple of weeks, for a weekend, a couple of weeks ago, and I taught a 2-hour workshop on feminine communication and what it means to share our feelings, desires, and boundaries in a collaborative way, and how to really understand how men's minds work and how to speak to them. So if you're interested in that, email me, because it was recorded and it'll be turned into a product that also is part of a whole weekend about how to get into your feminine that I was a teacher in. So email me at valerie@coachvaleriegreen.com if you are interested in seeing that, because it'll be available shortly. Getting into your feminine is just so pleasurable once you know how to do it. And I was in my masculine for most of my early 20s and just feeling like I was trying to draw blood from a stone. Like I was just exhausted and overworked and not sharing my feelings. And when I learned how to embrace my feminine, it was just so blissful. So I want that for all of you. So, okay, just scrolling to see if there's any other questions. I'm just so grateful that all of you have showed up. All right, Bacha is saying, if I'm not good at talking about feelings, does that mean that I can't attract masculine men? That's a good question. It doesn't mean you can't attract them. I think there's many ways of attracting masculine men without being in. There's many ways of being in your feminine without talking about feelings. It's really about being in your body. It's communicated in your body language. It's being receptive. It's appreciating him. It's listening to him. It's sharing your desires. And there's a difference between a desire and like I look at desires like the needs in nonviolent communication. If you're familiar with that, so you don't have to share your feelings, but it's important to share your desires. Like, for example, like if he's taking you out on a date and you don't like the restaurant, it's important to receive it and appreciate it, and then just say, hey, I desire to go to a place that's more, has a better atmosphere, or like has candlelight or has this kind of food or whatever. Like that's a desire, without like taking charge and planning the next date, sharing your desires. So it's definitely possible to attract a man without sharing your feelings. And it depends on the kind of man you want to be with. If he's not really into sharing his feelings, I think John Gottman said that there's, I don't remember the percentage, but it is a smaller percentage. It's something like 10 or 20% of people don't like talking about their feelings, and they're both conflict avoidant. And if both people are like that, then they actually have a good relationship. Because they don't sweep conflict under the carpet necessarily. They're just only talking about solutions, and they're very solution focused, and they just don't talk about the problem, and they don't talk about their feelings. They just solve the problem. So if you want to find a man like that and you don't need a lot of empathy for your feelings, then you can attract a masculine man who wants to lead and where he doesn't need you to talk about your feelings. But that's really up to you if it's important to you to have a man honor your feelings, and if it's important to you to receive empathy from him. And I would say, in order to have those deep, authentic, vulnerable conversations over time, like you might attract a man without sharing your feelings, but after a year or two, when you're really speaking about those deeper conversations and getting to know each other on a deeper level where you're planning your futures together, then feelings really do inspire men. Because I'll share a little bit about why feelings inspire men, because people are still watching, so I'm happy to be here. So feelings are something that most men don't have a lot of access to. They're just not taught to be in their feelings. Men are usually encouraged not to feel their feelings. And when men hang out with their buddies, they don't usually feel their feelings. They're not like talking about feelings. And when he's at work, he can't share his feelings. So he's usually missing that from his life. So when a woman shares her feelings, what that communicates to him, although she has to do it in a way that is not making him wrong. Because when we share our feelings in a way that is making him wrong, then that pushes him away, and he feels like he's not good enough, and that triggers him, and then it pushes him away, and then he doesn't want to be around us. But when we can share our feelings in an inspiring way, where we're just speaking about what we feel and what we desire or what we don't want, and it's about us and not about him, then that actually communicates that we love and accept ourselves. And what that does is it allows him to drop down into his heart. And that's the prerequisite for him to even be able to consider his feelings for you. So that's what actually inspires men to open their heart, is when a woman shares her feelings. So a man can fall in love without you sharing your feelings if you're feeling them. It's like up to you if you're really like, just if that's who you are. But to really fall deeply in love and fall deeper and deeper in love over time, what sharing your feelings does is it allows him to open his heart and feel like closer to you and endeared to you. And then if you're sharing your desires, then he'll want to meet your desires because he wants to make you feel good. And so if you're not good at talking about feelings, you might want to just start out by sharing your positive feelings, because that's always inspiring to men. You can't talk too much about your positive feelings. So you can say things like, if he asks you, what do you do for a living? You can say, well, I just love being a teacher because it feels so good to inspire young minds and to know that that'll impact them the rest of their lives. And when a kid comes up to me and has a problem, it just feels so fulfilling when I can help them open up their minds and feel good about themselves, right? So you're talking about what you do in a way where you're sharing your feelings. Or you can just say, it feels so good to be here at this restaurant. I just love the lighting and the music, and it feels really wonderful, and I just feel so comfortable here, So sharing your positive feelings is a good way to start out, because that also inspires men into their hearts and to feel their feelings for you when you're feeling your feelings. And I do, of course, teach in my programs how to share your challenging feelings in a way that draws them closer as well. And that is an art that I teach in my programs. And I do have a webinar, another free webinar on my website. And it's about how to share your feelings with a man. It's also in my free ebook called Man-ifest Lasting Love. And I'm happy to email that to any of you who reach out and request it. It's that's really for women who are in relationships, but even a new relationship, because you don't necessarily want to share your challenging feelings in the first few dates. But once you get into a relationship, then you do want to share your challenging feelings in a way that kind of tests him to see if he's emotionally available, but in like a light way. And I do. Of course, I share about that in my coaching program, but I do have a free ebook and a free webinar about how to share your feelings in an inspiring way once you're in a relationship with a man. And that could be, even just a few months long relationship. Then you want to start sharing your challenging feelings in a small way to see if you can hear them. And there's an art to doing that in a way that brings him closer rather than pushes him away. And so email me if you want the link to that webinar replay or the ebook. And like I said, it's Valerie at coachvaleriegreen.com. That's Valerie at coach, COACH, Valerie, and then green has an E at the end of it.com. And I'm happy to share with you that free webinar and the ebook about how to share your feelings. And of course, it's just an introduction, because this is something that I go into in depth in my coaching, but it's a nice introduction, and it gives you a map of the territory, so to speak. So hopefully that helps, Batya. I know that was a lot, and it's already been 100 minutes or something. Although, like I said, I'm happy to stay on if you have more questions. So I will put that offer up one more time. Oh, I guess it's already up. So there it is, right. I have another computer. My partner actually let me borrow his computer to do this webinar because it's better than mine, and he's so generous. So I get to have two computers. I can see that the offer's still up. So I invite you to apply for a strategy session, and we can go into detail into all these questions so that I can actually help you to develop a plan to be able to remove your blocks and learn these skills. And I also support my clients in not just learning the skills, but implementing them and, talking together about how to communicate and how to tell if he's right for you and how to respond to what he says to you. And all, it's very interactive, and we do role plays, and it's very fun. So thank all of you. You're all awesome. I love your questions, and this has been really fun. And yay. So I encourage you to reach out to me. And like I said, the link to apply for a strategy session is coachvaleriegreen.com/clarity. And I'll post that link in the YouTube replay. And For all of you here, I'll also email you the replay tomorrow, so you'll get to watch it again if you want to. Just in case you'd like to see my lovely face again. And we can also do that over Skype or Zoom if you want to have the relationship breakthrough session. I look forward to connecting with you. And I wish you all the best and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening or whatever time it is for you when you're watching this. So thank you. Best of love to you all. Goodbye.